Storyhive On-Location Victoria. We're coming to you live from House of Owl, Victoria's co-working space for creators, located on the unceded and ancestral territories of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples. Deep bow, deep respect, and deep love to the original caretakers of these lands. My name is Jordan Dack, poet, songwriter, all-around creative troublemaker, and your host on this creative deep dive into the creative process. And I'm sitting here with an absolute legend in not just the music industry, but in my world too. A good friend, Mr. Ron Thaler, entrepreneur, music producer, drummer, all-around seeker of truthiness, and someone who I'm very excited to sit across and dive into that brilliant brain of yours. So thank you.
I am so honored to be here. Very nice to see you, man. It's always a pleasure vibing and digging into wonderful things with you, and making music and making lots of other wonderful things. So it's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. It's a wonderful world.
Wonderful, 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 wonderful world. Okay, let's dive right in then.
Let's dive right in.
Okay, I've got a few statements here. Some may be true, some may be false.
Ooh.
Your job is to let us know. Okay?
Okay.
Let us know what's true, let us know what's false, let us
Okay.
know what's sort of true and what's sort of false. And if you want to get some context,
Of course.
feel free.
My pleasure.
Okay, here we go. True or false? Ron Thaler, also known as Blondie Boy, played his first professional show at age 16 with jazz saxophonist Gordon Clements and the Island Big Band.
So that is 97.364% true.
That's what we call truth.
That's what we call truth.
Yeah.
The gig was when I was 16 years old. It was at a place that no longer exists here in Victoria, so much so that I've completely forgotten its name. And the gig was actually with Gord Clements, who was, for a short period of time, a band director of mine, an individual who I held very high regard, wonderful saxophonist. And he's like, you're going to come out and play the gig with me. So I was 16 years old, and it was with him and his trio.
Oh, super cool.
And I was scared like the dickens, as one could imagine. But it was a very wonderful environment, and I think he took pretty good care of me. And it was a fun experience.
Very cool. Okay, next. True or false? Ron picked up his first drumsticks at age 11.
Well, that's pretty much true. It's a little bit earlier than that, but the truth is the first instrument that I played was actually piano. That was recommended to me by my mother, and my grandmother played piano for a very big part of her life, and there's a lot of music in my family and in my family history. And so I started on piano when we were living in Toronto, and I soon decided that there was probably better options elsewhere musically where I was concerned. And so ultimately I made my way to the drums just thereafter.
Yeah.
And it's, I think officially one would say I started to play the drums, I think it was age 9.
Age 9.
I think so, yeah.
And were your parents fine with this shift to banging pots and pans in the house? Or?
Well, at that point too, we moved out of an apartment, which was, as we say, piano suited. And we moved into a house which was, for the poor neighbors, drum set suited.
Right.
And so I've always had the drum kit in my room when I was a kid. And my parents were very tolerant. I think it was always viewed as a thing that you do to build enlightenment, to find specialnesses inside of you, I mean, it helps music on every level, helps tremendously when it comes to growth, when it comes to any of the other disciplines that we are all taught as kids or even as adults. It's just helpful across the board. So the coordination of drums in particular was both because I really liked it, but in fact was my stepfather who had mentioned to my mother, he said, I think Ron has a fairly innate sense of rhythm. Maybe drums is going to be something that's a little more to his liking, and to his taste. And so that's how that all pretty much started.
Okay. Now, I'm going to make a little shift here for the edit, because I noticed something.
A little shift for the edit.
A little shift for the edit.
A little shift.
Just like that. Okay.
Awesome.
Okay, so...
And so.
Just like that.
Yeah.
Okay, true or false? Ron Thaler, did you actually play drums on Alicia Keys' double Grammy winning hit, No One?
Yes. That is a question I probably get asked the most often in my life. This was during a period of time, so from Victoria, I moved to Vancouver. I attended university, but I always had kind of itchy feet and found myself taking entire semesters off to go on tour with label artists, to go on tour. I mean, that's where I met and started playing with Mauve and did a little bit of work with Sarah McLachlan and did a bunch of work with a lot of other artists and a fair amount of recording at a place called Bullfrog Studios. There were so many studios at that point in Vancouver. And then I'd always had the dream of basically moving to New York, and I had the opportunity, and so I took it and got there. And like everything, you try to inculcate yourself in the environment. You try to meet people, you try to do things. You get on some gigs, then you get other gigs, then you get recommended. It's pretty organic experience when it comes to being a musician in particular. And then I started to get invited to do a lot of studio work. My first studio experience was essentially one of the most comical experiences of my life, where I was asked to, in addition to playing my drum set, is to hit my drum stool, which is a thing made out of vinyl with cushion underneath, and that has no sound really. This was
during your first session?
This was my absolute first serious session in New York on an album that some of my idols actually had played on the West Coast sessions of, and I was brought in by the artist who was a guy named Jonathan Robbins on Arista Records to play the East Coast sessions, and we started out with this one song. And so that was my eye-opening experience into how peculiar and unexpected things can be. And as I kept playing and kept recording and kept working with people, ultimately, I became an in-house drummer at a studio called Tainted Blue in New York City, which was the top floor of what was Quad Studios, which is very famous for some interactions between Biggie and Tupac and a whole bunch of other very, very well-known characters. And if anybody knows a little bit about the history of Tupac, Tupac got shot in the lobby of that building. He didn't die from that, but he got shot and he lost a very important body part, shall we say, as part of that. And that's the building where we were, and that's the top floor. And I just did so many recordings across a whole whack of years there, one of which was Alicia's. And that's just among a whole group of others. It wasn't a hugely melodramatic situation. I was called in as a player to do a short period of time, fundamentally a 3-hour session, which is very common for professionals or union musicians in New York in particular. And, you just do the thing that you do. And Alicia was there for a short period of time. Her producer was there. It was a really nice experience because it felt like I was doing it, in fact, in the studio that was home, as opposed to going to a whole bunch of other different places and ultimately, playing in each one. And sometimes there's gear there. Sometimes you bring your own gear. So in this place, I had all my gear. I had all my things. And it was a wonderful experience.
Playing on the home field and basically. And do you remember the part itself? Do you remember how you felt about it?
Kind of.
Yeah.
So from a drummer or drumistic perspective, it's possibly technically about the simplest part you could ever play, but from a feel perspective, in other words, from the what we call in music the space between the notes, it was requiring a kind of a lope or a kind of a specific energy in order to make it feel right in that context. So that was the challenge. And then I had no idea what had happened with this song, because as I learned directly after we had recorded it, this was a period of time in Alicia's life where she was, she had had so many accolades and she had so much attention put on her and she did so much touring that she got kind of burned out. And so for a couple of years, it really didn't do anything. And then all of a sudden I heard it on the radio. Driving my mother's car, actually one day here in Victoria when I was visiting at that point, and I'm like,
yeah, those drums sound familiar.
Wait a minute, that's cymbal. I know what that is and whose it is. So, and I remembered enough of the song. It was still quite bare bones when we were working on it at that point, but I remember enough of the song to say, yeah, that's for sure me. So that's how I found out.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
Talk to me about space. I mean, drummers must think and feel into the space between the notes, even more frequently than others, potentially other types of musicians.
Well, drummers are really what I would consider the physical representation of the mitigation of space. So most of the time when somebody feels a groove, what they're feeling is they're feeling these kind of endpoints, one going to the doom, kak, doom, kak, doom, kak. And that movement is a form of, it's almost like water flowing in a particular direction, right? And if you're in a boat, you want to have either a smooth ride, you're going to have a not a smooth ride, or so on. The space between those points that most people just think, is a drum groove, is infinite. And the things you can do in that space and with that space are infinite in terms of how you subdivide it, in terms of where you play an accent versus unaccented, in terms of how you choose to interpret what it is that ultimately is supposed to make somebody physically engage and bind to the song. So that space really is where all the magic happens. So you take 10 guys who are, let's say, from different parts of the world, and you ask them to all play technically the exact same drum groove. And every single one will sound different based on how they position the space of the notes, the dynamics they choose to employ at those endpoints, the nature of how they strike the instrument, which itself is how you bring yourself to be within that space, right? If you're not playing the instrument, the space is immaterial. When you're playing the instrument, it's you that defines the space. And then for others, bass players will understand these things. There's, these notions of metronomics, and sometimes if you want a little extra excitement, energy, you might play a little in front of these metronomic moments. And if you want a little thickness and bulbous and weight and chonk to it, you might play a little behind. And it's a very, very evolved and complex skill set. And what it does is it enables the drafting of ideas, mostly for other musicians. So the way I always describe what a drummer is in the context of a song, if you think of a painting, for me, the bass guitar is the frame of the painting. And as some of you probably have been to museums all around the world, you will know that the frames are as profoundly artistic as the actual painting. So my family is French, and I've been to the Louvre multiple times, and I just marvel at the craftsmanship of just the frame. It's extraordinary. The drums are the physical canvas. They're that which binds to the frame to enable all the other things to exist within the context of that piece of art. And different types of canvases create different impressions when it comes to if you're using oil or if you're using another media or what have you. And that's the way I've always understood my role as a drummer. Now, I love doing solos. I've done many drum clinics in my career. I've talked about these issues that I'm sharing with you now as well in those times. The beauty of drums at the end of the day, truthfully, and the ultimate space between the notes, which we're talking about, is the fact that every human being has a drum, literally by scientific definition, inside their bodies. So what does that mean? That means if there is no beat inside of you, if there is no continuity, if there is no, in a sense, endpoints and the space between the notes, you're dead.
Yeah.
Literally.
Literally.
Not even figuratively or metaphorically or something. You are dead. So our reliance on rhythm, our need for the determinations of that space between these end notes and having those end points is tantamount to life. And without it, there ain't life.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing, those are the things I take seriously. And the way I can see my impact is how people engage and how they respond, right? If they're not moving their tuchuses, then I know that I'm not connecting with them in the way that is best and most important in that context. If they cannot help themselves and have to move, then I know I'm doing absolutely everything in the way that I need to be doing it.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, just what you shared there, I've got 3 questions popping up in my head here. Let's start with, it sounds like there is a bottomless pit depth of technique and thought that can go into the art of drumming. Is it necessary to let go of that at some point when you are drumming to offer a true and beautiful performance, or are you always thinking about the technique and all the stuff that you just shared while you're actually performing?
Oh God, no! My brain doesn't work that fast.
No.
The truth is, when you've done something for as long as I have done it, and I think I was sharing with you, Jordan, recently that I think I'm somewhere around 75 or 80,000 hours of participation in the world of music in terms of just sheer hours of commitment and a lot of great times, a lot of positivity, also some pains in the butt situations and so on. The thing that most people know about me and that I've shared with them also is that when I get on stage, I don't think there's a more comfortable place for me on this planet than when I'm sitting in a drum stool and playing. Because in fact, I don't think at all.
Yeah, that's right.
All I'm doing is living, in a sense, a little bit ahead of what my body is doing. So what I'm feeling, what my instincts are directing me to do, obviously there's an intellectual and a cerebral process involved. But if I'm not feeling it, in other words, the thinking is being produced in order to manifest my 4 limbs to move. But the decision making for that is not just an intellectual process. In fact, most of it is about a kind of inescapable truth that is not definable, but you know when it doesn't exist. It's like, love. When you talk about love, very oftentimes the issues that arise in that is when you become complacent with it, right? Because love, you recognize it when it exists, you just find yourself in a continuous process, a continuous flow with it. And then if it comes to an end, for whatever reason, you realize immediately the weight of what that is. And it's the same with drumming. You are not thinking, you are doing. So if some of you are familiar with typists, right, who sometimes you watch these people typing and you're like, how in God's name could somebody type that fast, 100 words a minute or so on or whatever. And then you start to understand when you ask them that their eyes are always 3, 4, or 5 words ahead of what their hands are doing. So the intellect is what's driving the mechanics, but it's not the intellect that has written the script.
No.
Right? And the responsiveness to what the script is what we do in music, that we don't define it. We just find ourselves in the middle of it or glued to it and then enabled by it. And sometimes things go awry.
Sure.
And sometimes there's these moments of unbelievable kismet where every band member and yourself hit a moment where things are so perfect, so aligned, so incredibly attuned to each other in these spaces. So not on the endpoints, but in the spaces, that something gets released and it's very hard to explain. But I can tell everybody out there that I've witnessed this as being an audience member, watching performances and sudden body reactions when I realized the kismet that was happening on stage, and watching the reaction of a group of people just sitting in the 2 rows in front of me, both go, oh. It is clear.
Yeah.
And it is substantive. What it is not is easily definable or kind of replicatable. And that's why all the hours of participation and involvement and the majority of my hours are as a kid, I hated practicing. I'm just being perfectly honest. I never liked to practice things that I already knew. That was one of the saving graces for me in terms of time. I only practiced things that I didn't know how to do or try new things. And I had great teachers. They would give me stuff. I'd try it, for maybe 2 minutes, and then I would just explore with what it would say. But that vocabulary allowed me at times to be able to engage with another partner in a conversation, musical, that framed some truth that needed to be shared. And then we find our way to it. It's, I don't know where I'd be. I probably wouldn't be a musician had I not felt these things and benefited from some of these moments, because they hold you through. Yeah. Especially through difficult times.
And those moments that you're talking about, do they show up more often in improvisational music or just as often in the scripted?
I always say that the best improvised music is the music that feels like it's through composed and nobody other than the performers realize it's complete improvisation. Which means that structure allows a very efficient pathway of communication between the listener and the performer. And that also exists on stage. It needs to be understood that other musicians that you're playing with, they're also technically your audience member. They just happen to be physically participating in the ongoings of what's happening. And as such, you must craft a conversational pathway. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't work. But I have found, for me, I've experienced it in all shapes and sizes, in all places and ways, and in all musical genres, which really, when you're a musician, I mean, musical style, musical genre, those are marketing terms more than they are terms about a creative consciousness or decision making or the putting together of something beautiful for others to listen to.
And that's perfect, because we're starting to talk about an energy that's present, regardless of the genre, regardless if it's pre-composed or in the moment. Is this the same energy that comes through in production? Because you're not just an incredible drummer, you're a brilliant producer. And
thank you.
I have had the pleasure of being in the room, and
I think what he's trying to say is being my victim.
That's right. I have been your victim, willing victim. And so tell me, because I know that it's just a fact that some of the most amazing producers out there also happen to be drummers. Is that a coincidence, or what's going on there?
I mean, I don't believe it's a coincidence, and I sort of have I think a framework of why it's kind of the case. At last count, it's not to raise my profile or anything, but I think at last count, I think I've done somewhere between about 3,000 and 3,500 shows, just like live performances. But in New York, when you're a hired gun to go around and play with people, on some nights I'd play 3 shows.
Wow.
I'd be, one show at one place, then I'd move and bring my snare drum and my cymbals and all that stuff, because they would have some backline in this other joint, and I'd go and I'd play there, and then another one later on. So that was, for those of us who were making a living doing it, that's pretty common.
Right.
That, in addition to all the studio work, you can really carve out a wonderful life. But what I started to realize, as I also got invited more and more into the production world, was people were starting to ask my opinion. And they're starting to ask, hey, Ron, what do you think of the bass sound? Hey, Ron, what do you think of the guitar sound? What about my voice? Do you think that we need more backgrounds here? So what that was starting to tell me was that people had an interest in my perspectives when it came to the larger schematic of a song, not just my parts, not my specific contribution as a drummer. So it got me thinking a lot. And to answer your question directly, I kind of believe that drummers have a great leg up on pretty much every other musician on stage. And the reason is that every single show happens in its entirety in front of a drummer. In other words, I have the bass player to one side, I have the guitarist to one side, I have a vocalist, maybe there's horns, maybe there's whatever it is in a specific show. And I have a vantage point sitting in the back, creating transition points, controlling the dynamics of things, movement between sections, the core tempo, a lot of these things, which I also have the benefit of watching the audience to see if they connect with what's happening.
What's the response feedback there?
Whereas if you think about it, all the other musicians are in front of the drums, more or less. And what does that mean? That means that for them to pay attention to the drums, they have to physically change their truth, and that alters decision making. Whereas for a drummer, I'm sitting back there, I got the whole show in front of me, so I know exactly what the guitarist is doing, I know exactly what the bass player is doing, I know exactly what the singer is singing, I know exactly where the cues exist. So the structural frameworks are already there for me to understand how the song is crafted and constructed, how it's put together, and how it's transmitted to an audience.
Yeah, and would you say, and this is just dawning on me right now, that would you agree that every song has movement to it? That every good song rather has movement to it, whether it's, and I'm not talking about whether it's danceable or not, but there is something that happens. I know that when I listen to a song and that I'm defenseless against, which is a term in that context that you shared with me initially, I can't help but feel the movement in the song. And if I think about one instrument in the world or one type of musician that knows movement more than any other, it's the drummer. So do you think there's anything there about just the fact that the actual master of movement is the one that's listening for the way that songs move?
So the power of movement is when you see others moved or move. That's the affirmation, if you will, that your expenditure of resources, namely as a drummer, all the things you're doing to fill that space, that magical space that the other musicians also themselves, when you see people moved and moving, you understand that what you've drafted in a way is an umbilical of a certain kind that has been invited also by them because they feel its value. Movement is absolutely critical to that umbilical. If you think about an unborn child, what is the purpose of the umbilical? It is to drive food, nutrients, sustenance, and life to the unborn child. So I firmly believe in, when you define movement, and again, we could go into greater detail and say, what is the definition of movement? Whether it's a classical piece, whether it's a modernist, articulated piece using peculiar instruments, whether it's a pop song, whether it's there is always movement which draws you in, and there's a logic to it, because you have a drum inside of you, and without its movement, you are dead.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's like, there's certain things that can be said, and there's things, I mean, you can't say anything more important than that. And the movement of that drum is what allows your life forces to exist. It allows the blood to circulate. It allows your eyes to see. It's everything. So movement is core. I'd even say that movement is maybe one of the least perceived components of the truth of a human being's existence, in that I've often thought, and I had as you know, a grandmother that passed away at the age of 107 and a half, which is pretty remarkable, and I hope to get anywhere near that, thanks to her. But what I recognized was that when she stopped moving, in other words, that she no longer was independently moving, in other words, that things that impacted her, she could not necessarily immediately respond to. That's sort of, for humans, and it's no different with any animal in the wild or so on, that's essentially the beginning of the end.
Right.
And so the absence of movement, in my mind, is an impossibility until, like your heart, if it doesn't beat, you're dead.
Yeah, I love that. Now, I brought up one term that you taught me years ago, which was, when in the studio you said, we want to get the song to a place where the listener is defenseless against it. The listener has no defense against the impact of that song on them. Now, is that the same for you as a goosebump moment, or rather, how do you hear that? When do you know that's happening in the studio? And is it something that you can go, okay, copy and paste, let's do that again?
So I can't remember if I ever shared this with you or with Danny or with any of the other folks, that we hang out and made music with. There is a very specific moment in every production that I lead, that I know when a song is ready and my hands go like this and don't touch it anymore.
Right.
It's a physical feeling, and it always happens the same way. And that physical feeling is when I listen to the song and I'm at the edge of tears, where I don't cry because I still have the wherewithal of engaging with what it is that I'm hearing, but I'm at the edge where it's going to make me cry. And that's any song, and that could be a punk song. It's any song. When it gets to that, then I know. And it's physical, and it's specific, and it is an accumulation of the ability to forget the 10 million takes of things that you have done and just become an audience member. Or another way of looking at it is, it's when, for me, the child is born, and that child then must find its way into our world's ecosystem and enjoy life and have everybody else enjoy life with it. So that's where these things are for me. There are times where productions, sometimes with, things and people can be difficult, circumstances can bring out stresses, bad decisions being made, kind of an over-reliance on how a song was before, as opposed to how the song is now developed and become a new, beautiful thing. Sometimes it's called basically being married to the demo. Yeah. And those are complicated things because they don't always yield the best results when you are married to a demo. On rare occasion, I could say in all my production career, I can remember off the top of my head 2 songs that were, truthfully, from the demo standpoint, I said, you know, these things are magic and beautiful. So, you know, we'll bring them in as is. We'll do a teeny bit of cleanup, a little bit of very, very marginal refinement, and then off they go because they are works of art. And who am I to tamper with a work of art? But it's fairly rare. Also because when people hire me, they hire me for my ears, and part of what that means is not just technical elements or instrumental elements or so on. It's to be a kind of a sounding board as an audience member, so that I have a value in representing what somebody who has not written the song, what somebody who has not particularly participated in the song will feel when they hear what's going on. Totally. And that's with label people, with agencies, with managers, with all the other folks that exist in the music industry that are, you know, surround the artist and enable or at least help advance the artist. That is what they are after.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking, if I were a songwriter watching this interview right now, I would be thinking, oh my God, yes, I want my music to get somebody like Ron and somebody to be on the edge of tears. How do I do that? You know? And
well,
yeah.
That's a great question. And I would love nothing more than to say, go buy this Nestle's Quick, put it in the milk, mix it up, and then you're going to get what you want. What you learn about this movement, this flow, this truthiness that exists, this space between the notes, all of these things, the sound selection, the framing of how you're going to phrase words, the overlays, all of this stuff is a feature of all the hours that I've done. I wish I could say that there is cheat sheets, or that there are cheat sheets in some very basic sense, which all you guys, you can just go online, you can start to say, you know, song blah, 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 you can use AI now, which that's a whole other discussion point that I'm sure we can have in some future discussion. Because you go to a hairdresser for a haircut doesn't mean that because you use his scissors and his products, you're going to get the same result as a haircut when you go home. In other words, there's a confirmation bias fallacy that because I believe it, therefore it must be true. And I am here to share with everybody with absolute clarity that knowledge is power, but instincts are far more powerful. And knowing what to do, or in a sense knowing specifically what not to do, is years in the making. And I don't have all the answers, but nobody has all the answers. Even AI does not have all the answers.
Are you sure?
I am pretty sure. What I will point out to everybody is to understand about music is that music, by its definition, is a dynamic art form. It's built on the edge, right between that which was, that which is, and that which can be. That's where artists and creators live. Dynamism is not a feature of AI. In fact, only static and the accumulation of static information, static data points, an aggregation of that which was, to create the semblance or the appearance of that which is and then potentially can be, does not translate to the emotions of people. It doesn't move them the same way. The dynamism is not the same as those who maybe use AI as a building tool to advance some of the frameworks around which are then integrated in a completely unique, different, special way through curation, through moderation, where we moderate, we take some of this, we take some of that, we put it all together, then we rebalance it because we're not quite happy and we keep finding. That's human dynamism. So I personally am, so the first thing I will tell everyone, my ears are always open. Jordan knows that about me. I don't dismiss anybody, and the reason is that I've worked with very well-known people and I've worked with very unknown people, and I've got to tell you, they're just people. Everybody's a people, and as people, everybody has something to offer, and my participation in those contexts is about aggrandizing. It's about making something better, something stronger, something more affirmed for other people's ears, not just the artists themselves. And that is an instinctual process. The notion that there exist algorithms through which you can process things, well, I have algorithms with all my gear and all the things that, and procedures and frameworks that I also process things, but I just don't have one or two. I probably have 10,000 of them. And it's a question of which one makes sense in the context for the individual and the goals of the project.
Yeah, I mean, when you're in a studio with a band or a songwriter, to what degree do you need to remove your identity from the process? Or is it important that it is always present and holds on to your unique perspective throughout the session?
So that's a very interesting question, and comedically, before I came to do this interview, I spent all day in the studio and we discussed exactly this.
Okay.
And one of the band members asked me, Ron, why do you dress the same always? Because anybody who knows me pretty much knows this is my work outfit.
It's true.
I wear a black shirt always. I wear different pants depending on if it's a getting everything set up in the studio day, it's a little messy or so on, or if it's get to work day. And there is a reason why I do that. And we were discussing it, like I said, we were discussing it earlier today, which is kind of funny.
Perfect, because I have wondered this for years and I have yet to ask Ron, so I'm looking forward to this answer.
It's a direct answer to your question. I don't want to be the center of attention. I have no interest. My role, like my goals in the context of a studio environment, and perhaps why I love so many different types of what marketers call music styles, and why I've worked across so many different music styles, is that I'm a lover of music. I'm not a lover of music style. What does that mean? What I actually am is a lover of the artist, and the artist and what it is that they are capable of doing and presenting and offering. And I have zero desire. Even when I was taking on drum students, the first thing I tell them on day one, I said, I have zero desire for you to become me. Zero. I want you to rely upon yourself, right? You know, show a person how to fish, they'll eat for a lifetime.
Yeah.
That's what I see my role, both in production and as a player in the past, and as an educator, and as somebody involved also, you know, in modern technology and those builds. I'm an enabler. I facilitate through questioning, through discernment that happens together, and through a certain knowledge of things and an instinct for what will lead us to the result the quickest. But if you ask any artist who I've produced, then in other words, you're going to ask yourself this, what you'll always get as a response is that Ron defended my priorities, not usurped my priorities. And that's something I'm very, very conscious of, because it's very easy to be a, you know, a bull in a china shop, drive your ideas, me, this is my sound, this is the thing I do, this is how I do it, you either subscribe to it or leave. It's not my approach. In the same way, I like to have conversations with people, right? I like to have dinner with people. I want to hear what people have to say. Obviously, anybody who knows me also knows that I think I come fairly well equipped with perspectives that are fact and information and let's say synergistic based as a function of a bunch of different things, to then have a great discussion on whatever that topic is that we happen to be discussing. I truly believe that it is not my job to create an artist. It is my job to emancipate an artist. Right? That's the difference. But a lot of producers, put this in quotes because it's not the way I define the term, create artists. They do things that artists should have themselves, to some degree, already invested some time in trying to find a way to do themselves. Which means nobody's asking an artist to be a virtuoso on any instrument, but an artist should be able to, at the minimum, play one instrument extremely responsibly and sufficiently to demonstrate their creative force, to demonstrate their creative voice and what it is that they can offer. Because then you have a substantive structure, again, to build upon.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's beautiful. And I think that, you know, you're involved in so many things, right? And in many ways, like in the music world, I'm wondering, music producer, you're in there, in the studio, emancipating the artist, but at the same time, you have tons of experience in the music business side of things as well, and have taught courses at the Collective in New York on music business. Do you find that the world of like the industry knowledge component and the creation component, when you're in the studio, do you need to let some of that industry business stuff go to be fully present to the process, or is there room for everything in the same space?
Well, it's an interesting question. I am myself rather entrepreneurial by nature. And what does that mean? That means that I seek out situations, right, which is no different than as a hired gun drummer in the past. I sought out situations to add my value to and build something as a result from that, right? What is a plumber? A plumber is a person who has a certain skill set, wishes to present that skill set so they can make a living at it, maybe grow and get better at what they do, possibly bring on more people and mentor those people through the process, and on and on. The business side of the equation, and in the music industry, it's quite weaponized by those who either don't want to broach it, or don't know how to broach it, or are a little old school in their thinking where they believe that phone will ring. I have a different perspective on how to start your music business approach. And it's a perspective that I learned, again, by gigging and working in New York and extrapolating on that. So I'm a firm believer that you are doing something right. In other words, your entrepreneurial spirit, and every artist everywhere fundamentally, and this includes the way people talk about the term entrepreneurialism today, right, and unicorns and all these other things in the technology and in the business world, everybody thinks they're a unicorn.
Right.
Everybody believes that their stuff is better than everybody else's. Why am I not being paid attention to? Why am I this? Why am I? This is a very common practice. What most artists don't do is realize that they have the greatest resource on the planet available to them. And that is every other human being on this planet. And so I learned this lesson by basically getting on stage, doing gigs, playing with different people. And I would know that that event, that evening, that performance I did was a successful one when I would get off stage and unsolicited, one or two or three or however many people would walk up to me and say, Ron, wow, really loved what you did. Really impressed. I think it can really bring something to a project I'm doing. Are you free next week to do a session? Are you interested in collaborating on a thing? Are you willing to have a listen to something, and then from listening to that, maybe we build a project together or so on. That's how entrepreneurialism becomes the center of your world. And from that, your business is grown as a feature of the organic offerings that you have, rather than an artificial space in which you are attempting to construct the optic of your brand. Don't make your brand about artificial garbage. Don't be a try-hard. Just accept, number one, you are good enough. I know this is a thing that just seems to escape most people who are creators or artists.
You are good enough.
You are good enough. Number two, in spite of being good enough, you never stop evolving your craft, your depths, your ways of exploring and transmitting exactly your good enoughness. You must always, this is a full-time job. The other truth is that if you accept that once you've crafted or drafted a song, a creation, and it then goes out into the world, it's no longer yours. It's now owned by the world. So guess what? Before you do that, why don't you ask a bunch of the world that's just sitting there and waiting what their perspectives are on what you have to offer. You have to have a thick skin, I admit that, but criticism is power. You saw when I did that speech here in that event, and it's funny, my parents were even there, and I pointed out, I said, I am the biggest critic and also the biggest constructive critic that you'll ever meet. Why? Because of my mother. And my mother's truth and the things she offered to me when I was a kid. And, at the time, it's very frustrating and stressing, and you're like, but I want to be the me of me, and it's all the meanness of me, and me. And it's always you. It's always been you. It will always be you. Abandon the notion that anything you have your hand in, even in a small part, isn't you. That's counterproductive on a artistic, on a branding, on a business, and ultimately on kind of self-determination or independence for yourself in your life. Every artist wants to be an artist, wants to make a living being an artist, wants to do certain things, wants to offer certain things, and ultimately wants to find that kind of promised land of creative yumminess that will give them everything they think. I'm here to tell you that anybody can have that, but it ain't a Garden of Eden. It's, if anything, it's closer to an industrial facility in mindset than it is a Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden is the optic that you're sold to assure that your hope is maintained. But the Garden of Eden, it is not. You're certainly not naked making music all the time. You understand what I'm saying? And you're not just throwing it blindly out. You are constructing, you are building, you are amassing inputs, raw materials. They get processed, they come out. Does every product that every company makes sell flawlessly? No. It's not always about the product. It's not always about the creation. It's about advancement. And advancing is something you can gauge.
Yeah, and I love that, there's the sharing it with the people around you, getting their perspective. And I love that the first thing you said was that you're good enough. Because without that, reaching out for other people's perspectives could be the end of someone's music career rather than the beginning of it.
Well, criticism is hard to digest, I understand, but you have to take into account the source. What is the source attempting to do? Is somebody just trying to make themselves feel better by dragging you into their own misery? Or is somebody else saying, hey, I see where you're going with this. I myself worked on something similar to this. We employed this and this. I think maybe you might find some value in attempting to do the same for yourself. Here's the resource that we used. Keep at it. I think what you're doing is great. Like, do you understand? It's intent. I mean, it's not just the law that invests the term intent into its construct. It's everything. Everything in life. Your intention is what will bring the will of others to your table. And you'll sit down and you'll have that conversation. That's what you do with art. That's what you do. There's a lot of people who endlessly talk about branding. They endlessly talk about the marketing features, the online assets, the strategies and TikTok, all of this stuff. And I'm eminently familiar with all of this, and I could tell you quantifiably and specifically, unless you are planning on genuflecting to everybody else's desires, interests, and almost becoming subservient to their needs, you must accept that you are good enough. Negative criticism is part of the deal. There's a lot of people who hate Beyonce. There's a whole whack of people who are not Swifties. They just go on and on and on.
Yeah, that's right.
It doesn't matter. It's totally, completely immaterial. All that is material is what you choose to draft and create that we all know can only come from you, because it'll never come from somebody else.
I love that. And we all know that, or we know that when communicating one's authentic voice into a song, there are still some things to keep in mind when constructing that piece of music. And I've often heard you talk about a 5-hook philosophy. Could you share with the world now a little bit about this 5-hook?
Okay, so the 5-hook philosophy is a framework that originally was presented to me to help me kind of understand why it is that certain songs bind and others don't. In a talk that I gave here, we used Annie Lennox and Sweet Dreams Are Made of These to just demonstrate to the audience members that everybody in that audience understood and knew these hooks. And a hook is for lack of a better term, I mean, all the musicians out there know what it is, but a hook, for those who are uninitiated, means a phrase, whether it's played on guitar, kazoo, voice, or anything, that is hummable and easily memorable, and it becomes a bit of an earworm inside your mind, and you can't forget it, and that makes you love the song. It makes you want to hear more of the song. So if you have 5 distinct ones in a composition, what you are heightening is the probability that more people will ingest and absorb and remember those, as opposed to if you have fewer of them in your song. They come in all shapes, flavors, and colors. They represent something undeniable. Maybe the best way to explain the 5-hook principle is to use There's an undeniability to the song. And for me, it's one of the gauges, oftentimes, when a new artist approaches me or a management company or a label say, hey, we got somebody, here's some of their new songs, here's some of the new things that we're doing, you want to be involved with this, can we put you together with these people for a song or two,
Right.
an album or whatever. And I will invariably, that will be one of the principles is, do I bind to what's going on? And then the second version of the concept of the 5-hook principle is the live performance of said. Because when I am invited to work with an artist, I'll invariably go and see them performing live somewhere. That's a fairly standard practice. I already have a good understanding of, let's say the first layer of the music, of what it is they're trying to achieve sonically and conceptually. So I'll go to a live venue, and for about 15% of the time, I'll watch the band. And for the other 85% of the time, I watch the audience. And it allows for me to also confirm to myself that what I considered a hook is in fact hooking the audience members. And that's through a kind of immediacy. They're whoop, right to the stage. They're waiting for a moment. They might sing that moment. They might bring somebody closer to them to reaffirm that moment. It is all of these things. And it's a fairly important concept that, as I said, was shared with me many years ago, and in particular helped me and has helped me with all the production features and all the angles of things I deal with in production.
Incredible. Now, I mean, the number of projects that you've worked on is infinite.
I wouldn't go that far, but it has kept me, yes.
Infinite in the multitude of lifetimes that you've lived.
It has kept, yes, it has kept food in the fridge and a roof over my head,
That's
yes.
right.
Yes.
Now, is there any project that stands out for you that you feel particularly proud of or being a part of?
It's interesting. Most of the projects I say that I am involved in carry a certain weight for me, but it tends to be temporal. Because I think if I am truly honoring to the artist and the situation that I find myself in, while the other projects that I love, and then even the other independent musics that I didn't have a hand in, but that are important to me, that I love and that have impacted my subconscious, the artist is entitled to my full conscious participation in what it is that I'm doing. So invariably, I tend not to hold on to that many frameworks or projects or structures that I've done in the past. Of course, the one I'm most known for, the Alicia, No One, that's a favorite for obvious reasons. From a production standpoint, I tend to be, you're only as good as your last thing. That's a bit more my mindset. So right now, I'm working on a project that you also had your hand in, which is an artist from Toronto named Brandon Phillips, who is exceptional in so many ways, and in particular, and above all else, the methodology and the kind of earnest enlightenment in his songwriting practices that I would say compositionally and emotionally are rare in this modern world. So I would say that for me is an important current situation. Also, if truth be told to everybody, we are working on a brand new project, which for me is of great excitement because I remember the processes and the wondrous things that we went through in the first album, and then of course all the touring and all the other things, and the this and the that, and sitting, you know, in the big buildings in LA, and then all these wonderful experiences and shows and opportunities. And so what 12 Times Pretty, which is the name of the band that Jordan and another fellow named Daniel Martins lead, is a very unique approach to music. It even challenges me when it comes to the contributions that I can make, the refinements, the elevations, because many of the songs are gems. I mean, one of the things we last worked on was a song destined for the Olympics in what was it, 2022 World Cup? Sorry,
World Cup,
was the last World Cup.
The last World Cup, 4 years ago.
Yeah, 4 years ago, and that, you know, that piece of music is phenomenal and was a remarkable thing that was generated, and I was like, wow, this is we gotta.
Yeah.
Here we go.
100%,
We gotta.
100%. Well, thank you for the shout out.
No,
Sue,
you're very-
appreciate that. Appreciate that. So, where is the music industry at right now, and where is it going? Crystal ball time. And surprisingly, our time is whizzing by here. So this will be like, we'll probably have 2 more questions.
Okay.
after this. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Where is the music industry at? Well, I would say we are in a tremendously turbulent moment, above all else, because the law hasn't quite caught up to the practices that now seem to be prevalent in the music industry. So that's one thing to be concerned about, particularly AI,
Right.
the curation and the aggregation of how it is that LLMs are made, where they're made, who makes them, who benefits from them, how it is that those who are content creators themselves have not benefited to the same degrees as in other environments and other platforms. Those are all things that, so everybody understands, are tremendously energetic right now, particularly in the legal world and particularly in the European theater, and now quite aggressively in the United States. To be honest, the majority of that is because the major power players in the industry see revenue being, how do we say, this love in a nice way, revenue basically disappearing, and kind of a concern for future revenue and how it is that they are going to maintain control over it, which is also fundamentally the exact same concern an artist has. Is I have my intellectual property, my songs, how do I invite the world to my table to enjoy them, and how do I make sure that I am compensated both statutorily, right, which means that these are things that are existing because the government has put them into place, and otherwise with regards to what I create. And there is a big movement, although a lot of people are talking about it, but in my mind it's actually been going on for quite a while, is this direct-to-consumer thematic, which is to say that if you are an artist that has, you know, some, for example, like Alicia, right? 45, I think 45, 46, or 47 billion spins all in at this point. You can leverage that and create inward pathways to your content, to your music, to everything you're selling, right? So you're selling tours that are upcoming, you're selling opportunities, you're selling branded merch, you're selling obviously music, you're so many areas that of collaborative possibility, that this kind of inward directivity where there is no middleman is being viewed as a new thing. I've always understood that to fundamentally be the indie artist, or the notion of an indie label and how it is that it drives eyes to its products. It obviously doesn't have the same marketing dollars. It doesn't have the same maybe certain business inroads or a kind of what you might call forensic accountancy and the ability to pay for it so that you're always getting all the money you are due from all the sources where that money is collected.
Right, managing them.
But there's a credible number of ways to make money. And one of the most important things that I would tell everybody, given that this world is, turbulent, not just in music, just in general, this world is very turbulent and makes me very angry and very sad at the same time on so many different sides. Again, that's another conversation. In the context of music, I just remind everybody, defend your IP. Your IP, the intellectual property that you control, is your Garden of Eden. To use that expression again.
Yeah.
It is that which will allow you to have a retirement plan, to have income in continuity because of what is known with intellectual property as the long tail, right? So if you happen to have something that hits, or let's say relatively hits, you're going to make a certain amount of money, and then over a very long period of time, that's going to flatten out, but it's still generating money.
Right. Yeah.
And that money that it generates, 10 years, 20 years from now and onward, doesn't require remediation, right? An old building, if you buy a piece of property, an old building, you got to fix it up. You got to change the wiring.
Yeah.
You got to check the foundation. You got to redo the roof, the gardens, this, that. With music, once it's created, it has its ethic. It's there forever. And that has a very specific marketplace value. And in particular, in the last 10 years, and really, really, really exacerbated during the pandemic, is the fact that that intellectual property has interested an incredible number of venture capital organizations, other business environments to, in fact, become part of that world. So what it is that we've always known as creators, that our intellectual property has value, now others are recognizing it because they recognize a lot of the financial and, let's say, strategic benefits that exist as a result of it. Defend your intellectual property with your life. It is the most powerful tool you will have to invite the people you want to the table, to negotiate, and to become really self-sustaining over the long run. These are the things that quite a few artists have come to understand, and very well-known artists have teams that dedicate themselves specifically to this, this truth. So.
Yeah, so you sort of, you kind of just spoke to it in that answer, but there are artists, songwriters, musicians, artists everywhere that are perpetually trying to figure out whether they are going to give up the path of creation or to stick with it. And it's like, I hear it from artists all the time. I guess is today the day that I don't do this anymore? I've been doing it for so long. What would you say to an artist who is sort of living on that edge perpetually in Victoria, if specifics matter in this case?
Okay. I don't think most people are going to like the answer I'm about to give. I'm just going to say that right now. I have a very particular belief system about the artist. You don't become an artist. You are an artist. There is no separating you from the artist. You are one and the same. So for me, even when I was very young, and as we talked about, the age that I started playing, I knew from a young age that this is what I was going to do. There was no negotiating with myself. Did I feel like it? Did I not feel like it? Was this, the right thing? Nah. I just had to find a way to make it happen. So when artists talk about, do I remain an artist or do I, stop being an artist? What they're actually talking about is money.
That's right.
And we must break it down to its core truth. If you are in a position where you're asking yourself the question, then by Ron's definition, I'm sorry to say you're not an artist. Because an artist doesn't have that discussion with themselves. An artist finds a reason to do art, not a reason not to do art. And you could say that almost about anything in life. There are people who exist who find reasons not to do things. I'm a person who finds a reason to do things. Not everything is going to work. And that's the same as if you are going to abandon creating art in the name of, massage therapy or banking or whatever, that the financial reflection of your efforts hasn't been what you expected. But that doesn't mean you are an artist or aren't an artist. If art is an inescapable truth to you, which means that you have a relationship with it that you can't just say, we're getting a divorce, then you are an artist. You live it, you breathe it, you care about it, you get mad about it, you hate it and you love it, you do all the emotional practices with it. But above all else, you cannot allow yourself to become indifferent to it. And when you hit the line of indifference, so to answer your question, if you've become indifferent to art, then for me, personally, you never were an artist. What you were was a person who was pursuing art.
Yeah.
And there's a difference. And pursuit is just like pursuit of money. Whereas for me, the second I was clear on this, I'm like, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
And I know exactly when that happened. I know exactly the moment when that happened in my life. I was walking into the Bay with my mother because we were going underwear shopping. I swear to God, this is the story. We were going underwear shopping at the Bay, still when I was a kid here in Victoria. And I'm like, in Toronto. And as we walked in, at that time, there was the record section, or the music section in the Bay, which basically doesn't really exist anymore, except for, hardware pieces, if you will, things that are kind of make-believe, record players or make-believe, or these things. There's no section where there's music, where you can go and decide, okay, do I want a tape? Do I want a CD? Do I want a vinyl? None of that exists anymore. But for me, it did. And they were playing Message in a Bottle from the Police. And I'm like, da, 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 da. And I just walked right in. I'm like, deer in headlights. Wow. Like, this is amazing. What is this? I must have this. So I bought that record. And that moment, I'm like, I'm screwed. Yeah. I know it. This is my life. Now I have uncovered a truth about myself that I cannot pretend doesn't exist within me. I don't have an option. This is non-negotiable. So what does that mean? That means that you must find reasons to do things. As an artist, money and the money issues suck. I understand that. It's tough. But if you stop thinking about the gig as the ultimate thing and you start to think about the gig as the ultimate thing, you're going to pivot your understanding of what the marketplace is, where you're going to go find money. So this is a thing I've shared with so many artists and so many people. I'm like, how many hours must you invest for a $150 gig that you're doing in the city? Right? What are the hours you must invest, okay? So me, as a hired gun, back in the day, I got to transcribe the songs. I got to know what the songs are. I got to probably, So let's even assume that takes me for a set of 12 or 14 songs, 2 hours, because I'm fast. Then we add to that the rehearsal. I got to at least do one rehearsal with the band, although I will admit to you, I've done many a gig in New York where I show up to the gig, there's music on the stand, and you just got to figure it out, which is beyond stressful. Do not recommend this to anyone, but it's a skill set like anything else, and you can develop it, right? So let's just say you have one rehearsal, you got the 2 hours, one rehearsal is 3 hours, right? Getting to the rehearsal, let's even say it's a quickie, you ride on the subway in New York, half hour each way, right? So you're already 4 hours. You're at 6 hours there. Then to do the gig is, let's say it's a one set gig, right? It's a showcase for an artist. What is that? That's about an hour, right? You need to get there with your gear. So let's call that, and break your gear down and take it. And me as a drummer, it's not a flute gig. I can't take a bus to this, right? So let's add, even if I'm super lickety-splickety, another 2 hours, right? Before you know it, you are at 10 to 12 hours all in for a gig that pays $150, right? And if you do a lot of these, that's how, okay, I could make a living, I could sustain myself, for periods of time, but it's a push. And then I say to you, how many hours would it take you? How many hours would you have to invest in actual activity to find a $1,000 gig? What is a $1,000 gig? You have to do a little research to understand where is the marketplace that offers that gig, because there's many, and in New York, I will admit, there are many, right? Okay, what do I got to do to get this $1,000 gig? Who do I need to know? Who do I need to speak to? Who do I need to meet? Most of the time, you need to meet people who are not in the circle of poverty. In other words, they're not in the circle of those who only get offered $150 gigs. In other words, they're not always musicians. They are other people. There are other opportunities. There are situations. So imagine if in a month, instead of getting 10 to 12 $150 gigs, you get $4,000 gigs. What does it take? How many hours are you actually investing in getting each gig? How much time is it to get to the place where you need to meet the people and you need to, mosey around, introduce yourself, if somebody else introduces you, all of that kind of stuff, where these relevant folks are.
That's right.
Right? How long does it take you to research it? Christ, with AI now, it would take you probably all of 30 seconds. And they're like, okay, then I have to go to these places, right? What's the ticket price to get into this? This mixer, this, that. And then before you know it, you're building your network. And that's the thing that most musicians don't understand. The real power for a musician with regards to their network is not other musicians. It's a small group of other musicians, those who really push the limits, find opportunities, they're in super high demand, so ultimately they get the better and better and better gigs, which means also they get those $1,000 gigs. And this is the truth. You do those 12 gigs, you're spending 10 to 12 hours for $150, what is that, 140 hours a month? Right? Let's even make it 100 hours a month. Do you believe, in terms of your direct involvement with the right folks in the right environments that you have to figure out, you got to spend a little time investigating, do you believe you need to spend 100 hours with them between the gig and the involvement? You'll be shocked that it might take you, if it's purposeful application of your hard, determined activity, 30 hours? 40 hours? Guess what that means? The other 60 hours, or it's more, but we're just kidding for our math. 60 hours are yours.
That's right.
To do productively, creatively, aggrandizingly, to build new things for yourself, to explore, to get together and do other sessions. It frees you.
Beautiful. Yeah.
It frees
And also
you.
those 40 hours that were invested will probably be the hardest 40 hours spent, because that $1,000 gig, once you've accessed and connected with that circle beyond your musician circle, that will lead to another $1,000 gig,
Right.
and another $1,000 gig, and the first 40
It's
hours
what
trying
they
to
call
get it.
getting the seat at the table. This is the expression
exactly.
that people use all the time. Everybody's like, how the hell do I get a seat at the table? You know, who do I have to kill?
Yeah.
Who do I have to go after? How do I mix it in? I'm like, I've just given you a blueprint for the seat at the table.
Yeah.
And there's many tables.
And full circle back to the beginning of our conversation where you said the phone isn't just going to start ringing.
Nope.
You know, no one is coming to knock on your door and say, this is the most amazing music I've ever heard in my life. No, you're going to have to walk out that door yourself and find those people.
Especially in the first stages of the continuation of what you're trying to achieve. Absolutely. But as I said, you're good enough. You truly are. You just need to accept that because you yourself are good enough, doesn't mean you stop growing, doesn't mean you stop evolving, doesn't mean you don't need to commit to finding new growth vectors for yourself. Because that's also, in fact, a direct reflection of you being good enough.
Yeah, that's right.
That will, right? That's
Beautiful.
That's what it is.
All right, I've got one final question.
Oh my God.
One final question. Now, there's like 20 questions that I haven't asked you. Now, the question is, what's important to you? And the way I'd love for you to think about this question is not what's been important to you over your life or even what's important to you last month, but what's important to you right now. And I know one thing we didn't get to talk about, 5 to 10 other projects that you're involved in, including spatial sound and this incredible world that you've already had such impact in. So if you want to tie that into this last question, you know, tie that do. Want to give the opportunity to speak to it. But yeah, let's just love to just get present to what's important to Ron right now.
Well, it's a tough question for me to answer because what's important to me right now has less to do with music and in some ways more to do with my utter disgust with where our world currently is. And I say that not as a political statement, but as a statement of things that I never thought I would see in my lifetime reemerging in ways that they really, really, really shouldn't. So I look above all else for truth and authenticity. I have always held those in pretty high regard. Truth in the sense that I welcome you sharing your truth, but I really hope it's built on the truth, not just your truth. And authenticity in the construct of what it is that you are offering to the world, because that's a very important thing for artists to understand. What we do is we offer. We don't ask, we offer. The pathway to us having the stability in our lives is built around the offer, not the ask. So authenticity for me is built into that which we are offering. I have had many discussions with many people over the years, and also very recently, about this notion that we are becoming a planet almost uniformly built on transactionality. And while I accept that obviously, not only in business, but in other ways, and in ententes between creators, there's transactional truths and transactional processes that are part of it. I cannot reduce my truth, and by extension the way I incorporate truths, to uniform transactionality. I want the space between the notes. I want that magic, that unexpected. So what I'm not getting enough of in this current world is that.
Yeah.
And it really weighs on me, and it diminishes my satisfaction in many environments. So you ask me what's important to me: truth and authenticity. And I don't see enough of it. So if there's people out there who are both truthy and truly authentic, my ears are always open. They've always been open.
Yeah.
Whether I'm doing a music production, whether I'm invited to just play drums on a recording, or whether I'm working in the technology sphere, and it's a very big part of my current life is immersive sound, or what they call spatial or 360 sound. And those are all about, those environments are literally all about revealing a truth, pulling back the mask of limitations and demonstrating that here is the truth. Yeah. And that stuff is just supremely important for me. I wish more people would accept the truth rather than act upon their truth. And our world would be better. The creative process would be better. The qualitative and quantitative output would be better. People would be happier, more recoited, and breathe somehow deeper, take in more air, which itself in our human processes we know will allow us to expel more not air.
That's right.
And make us feel better and do better.
Yes.
And care better and apply ourselves better. I have more faith, interestingly, in the next generation than I do, in some ways, in the current generation. So when I say next generation, I mean kids who are, let's say, between 10 and 17 or 18, who are, you know, right? They're at home. They have the roof over their head. They're free to explore and do and apply themselves and care for things and solve, right? That stuff is beautiful for me. It's just like, you know, if we're in a studio and there's a problem with the sound, we have to know how to solve it. Well, when a kid says, hey, I really don't like this idea of microplastics being freaking everywhere in the ocean and all the garbage, I'm gonna figure out some way, because I'm inspired by this science fiction movie and I'm inspired by my friend, and then I go listen to Bulgarian folk music that makes no sense to me, but it drives my brain in a certain way. And then I come up with an idea and I share it around, and then people share it around, and before you know it, it becomes the way. That's what creative force offers humanity. And creative force is to some degree the opposite of transactional force.
Yes.
And so I'm a big believer in it. Dynamism.
Yeah.
Right? Dynamism. Change is dynamic.
Yeah.
Change is not static.
That's right.
So that's what's important to me.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for asking the question. It's a pretty deep and I think important question to ask people.
I agree. Yeah. And thanks for sitting here and having this conversation.
Dude, I could not have enjoyed it more.
And thank you to all of you beautiful people.
Thank you, everybody. A pleasure. And I hope you got something out of this treatise of humanity and creativity.
Yeah.
And thank you to Jordan for putting this all together and for inviting me.
It is absolutely my pleasure. And I look forward to connecting with you guys again. Big thank you to Telus Storyhive, House of Owl, the one and only Ron Thaler. Be well, be wild, and keep that creative force alive. Good night. And now if you want, you can stare deeply into the camera as the live stream continues. And I am mesmerized.